Lesson 3. Who's telling the story? When we talk about who telling the story, we're asking about a first person, second person, or third person. It even continues on to third person limited and third person omniscient. Basically, when we're asking about the point of view of the story, is who is actually telling you about the characters and what took place. The person or voice who tells the story is known as the narrator. Is the main character telling the story? Or was it just a voice that seemed to be outside of the story looking in? So in fourth grade, we really need to focus on two areas of point of view. First person versus third person. In first person, we are kind of looking for those important clue words that are telling us that the character is actually telling the story, because they use pronouns like I, me, mine, my, we, us, our, and ours. And in third person, someone who's outside of the story, kind of looking in and telling the story about what happened to all the characters, you're hearing pronouns like he, him, his, she, her, they, their, and them. Second person is really hearing the word you and your, but we don't have to cover that. I just wanted to show it to you, though. And the third person, omniscient, I kind of like to think about that one as like God. Like this, the narrator that knows everything about how every character is feeling, their every thoughts, whereas a lot of times the other narrators don't have that. So there's the differences of those, but we are really going to focus on first person and third person. So who's telling the story? Well, the narrator is the person who tells the story, and like we said, first person narrator is you're going to hear the word I. The character is the narrator and is usually the main character of the story. And you're going to hear them keep repeating the word like me and my. And the first person is going to be saying I or we. I went to the movies with my best friend. We bought candy and popcorn at the concession stand. That's how you know the character, the main character is telling the story. Whereas in third person narrator, you keep hearing them say he, she, or they, refers to the main character by their name. The narrator is usually outside of the story, kind of looking in. For example, Michael was determined to win the race. He practiced on the track every day after he finished his homework. There you hear the pronouns he and his. And you're hearing them say the main character's name, which was Michael. So there you know it's the third person narrator.
Point of view refers to who is telling the story. First person means writing from the author's point of view or perspective. Lizzie wrote the following story. As I walked through the park today, I saw the biggest, most beautiful blue butterfly. Common words used in first person are I and me. Second person is a point of view where the narrator tells a story to another character using the word you. Lizzie told Rosa the following story. You should have seen the butterfly. You would have loved his bright colors. When using second person, the author could be talking to the audience. We can tell this by the use of you, your, or your. Third person point of view is told by a narrator who is not part of the story. Will tells the following story in third person. As she stood staring lovingly at the butterfly, a UFO appeared out of nowhere and sucked the blue creature into its ship. When writing in third person, words such as he, she, it, and they are commonly used.
So in Jalapenos Bagels, one of the books that is our mentor text, we want to know, well, who is telling this story? And again, when we use it in class, we know that Pablo is torn in what type of food that he needs to bring in for his big international feast day at his school. What should I bring to school on Monday for International Day? I asked my mother. My teacher told us to bring something from our culture. You can bring a treat from the Pandira, she asks. Pandira is what Mama calls our bakery. Help us bake on Sunday. Then you can pick out whatever you want. It's a deal, I tell her. I like helping at the bakery. It's warm there and everything smells so good. All right, so here we have Pablo. So what do you think? Is it the first narrator or a third-person narrator? See if you can try to think about that. Look for those clues. Well, I hope you chose first-person narrator because they're using the word I. What should I bring to school for International Day? I ask my mother. My teacher told us to bring something from our culture. So you can hear that he is telling the story. Did you notice the word use of I? Pablo is our narrator. So the story is first-person narration. Now, if we read on to the adventures of the spider, who is the narrator of this story? And this type of fiction is what we call a folk tale. It's been passed down from generations to generations, and it usually tells us a lesson. Why spiders live in ceilings. Once upon a time, the rainy season came to the forest, as it comes every year. But this time there was more rain than ever before. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. At night, the water fell with a roar like thunder. In the morning, it beat against the branches of the trees and tore their leaves from them. It pounded against the thatched roofs of the villages and rushed about the footpaths. Little girls set pots under the sky to catch the water and ran back, slipping and sliding. The small, friendly rivers became deep and wide and covered the sides of their banks. During the darkness, the people fastened their doors and did not even look outside, for they could hear nothing but rain, rain, rain. The animals in the forest, too, were frightened. By all the water, Hare could not find meadows or of the grass for his dinner. Elephant could not walk through the trees to chew the young branches. Tortoise could not crawl slowly along the earth to catch insects, and Spider, who had been too lazy to plant his farm or to set his fish traps, had nothing to eat at all. Worst of all, the great leopard who hunts at night was hungry and had to stalk the forest during the day. One afternoon, many days, the rain stopped. Spider set out at once to look for something to eat. He went down to the wide path that led to the river. Leopard was hunting too, with a hungry look in his eye. He walked quietly on his with his 4-foot soft feet along the path that led to the river. That is how it happened that Spider and Leopard walked right in to each other. Now, usually Leopard loves a fat, juicy supper. He never thinks of anything as puny as Spider. But today he thought even Spider would taste good. And so he stopped to chat and tried to look friendly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Spider," said Leopard. "How do you fare in all this wet weather?" Now Spider was lazy and very naughty, but he was not stupid. He knew at once that Leopard's voice was much too sweet. "I am well, Mr. Leopard, but I am in great hurry," he answered. And with that, Spider jumped behind a great palm leaf, and Leopard could not find him, no matter how he tried. Leopard was so angry. He roared a roar that echoed against the hills. He sharpened his claws, and his eyes turned green. Did you notice that this story is being told about Spider and not by Spider? So, right there should be a clue to say whether if this is first-person narration or third-person narration. Hopefully you guys are thinking about that. "Never mind," he thought after a few minutes. "I will go to Spider's house. I will hide behind his door and wait for him to come back. Then I will eat him. And if he brings any food, I will eat that too." Leopard went up the path from the river. He went to Spider's little house, which was made of banana leaves. There he made himself into a round ball. He put his nose on his great paws and then sat down to wait. Haven't I already told you that Spider was not stupid? He guessed exactly what Leopard would do, and so he took some time to think how he should handle the matter. First, he he went to the river and caught some fish left in the traps by people. Then he went to a farm and ate a cassava, for it was the custom that a hungry man can help himself to as much food as he needs, and no one will mind. When he had enough to eat, Spider spent the afternoon looking for all of his friends. He stayed away from his house as long as he could. Finally, it began to get dark. The sky filled with clouds, and once again the rain began to fall. At last, Spider had to go home. So he went up to the path that led to the river near his little house made of banana leaves. So now I'm also seeing clues in this, like pronouns, he, him, and himself. So I'm hoping that you guys all thought it was a third-person narrator. The narrator is looking into the story and telling you all about the leopard and the spider and all about the other characters. He is not part of the story. Like when you're hearing this question, haven't I already told you that Spider was not stupid? Usually folk tales are passed down orally, so sometimes the storyteller speaks directly to the readers, and that's what he was doing here, asking you guys a question about the story. Spider looked at the earth to see if Leopard had left any tracks. He listened to see if Leopard made any sound. He saw nothing and he heard nothing. Still, he knew the ways of Leopard and he decided to try something else. So he kept walking down the path, humming to himself, just as though he were thinking of nothing. Suddenly, he cried out, "Ho, my banana leaf house!" Nobody answered. Everything was silent. Spider walked a little nearer. Still, there was silence. Nobody said anything. "That's funny," said Spider loudly. "My little house always answers me when I call her. I wonder what is wrong." Once again, with all of his might, he shouted, "Ho, my banana leaf house, how are you?" And from a deep inside the house came a small, high voice. "I'm fine, Mr. Spider. Come on in." Then Spider burst out laughing. "Now I know where you are, Mr. Leopard, and you shall never catch me," he said. And with that, he ran as quick as a flash through the window and up to the highest corner of the ceiling. Leopard could not catch him, although he tried and tried. Spider was warm and dry and safe in the ceiling. I suppose that is why he decided to live there, and he's still living there today. The person telling our stories, the narrator, is so important because he or she helps us understand the stories through his or her eyes. As we continue our study of fiction, let's remember to determine what type of narrator is telling our story. Is it first person or third person? Once we determine the narrator by looking at the words, those pronouns like I or he or she, we readers will gain further insight in our story's characters, plot, and theme.